What band? Who was that?
That was Simple Plan.
Simple Plan.
Yeah, dude. Simple.
God, they were
Simple
terrible.
Plan. Between them, Good Charlotte.
Yep.
Let's think of some other ones. Those two come to my mind where I'm like, I'm so glad that version of music is now history.
Yes.
Crap. We'll
Yeah.
never go again.
Terrible pop punk was like punk music. Loved it. Pop punk.
Yeah.
Oh God.
Oh, hey, oh, hi.
I will say this: probably the last thing quasi connected to pop punk that I ever listened to was former Blink-182 frontman Tom DeLonge's project Angels and Airwaves.
Angels and Airwaves, yeah, dude.
Little less punk, a little bit more into the belief of aliens. Were we talking about that story about how have we talked about this? He started a organization that's all about the study of UFOs and aliens.
Oh yeah, dude. He has special security council clearance or something like that.
Yep. His organization is almost $40 million in the hole.
Dude, I watched his interview with Joe Rogan. Joe Rogan was interviewing him or whatever. And you didn't have to listen to anything. You just have to look at Joe Rogan's face during the interview. And he's sitting there going like,
which is saying something, because I try my hardest to never look at Joe Rogan's face.
ever. But seriously, he's sitting there just the entire time with that left eyebrow, cocked up like the Rock, going like, so you're not crazy. Pretty much. I would actually go if Blink-182 with Travis Barker and Mark Hopkins and Tom DeLonge, if they did like an actual reunion of those three, I'd probably go and watch it. I used to love Blink-182, man.
Yeah, man. They
awesome.
were like the last good punk band,
Yeah, my brother got to meet him in California.
Green Day got real bad.
Yeah, Green Day after Dookie, after their album Dookie, they sold out.
Quick decline there.
Yeah. Oh yeah. And I remember, I think when I was in high school, they put out like a new album or something, and it was that one that's like summer has come and gone. It's awful, dude.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's just like a terrible. Oh, so bad. I
think that was after high school for us.
Maybe
that was later on.
This is the last thing that I remember of Green Day.
Yeah, they bought fully into the emo stuff.
Yeah.
Happy Saturday. This is the weekly Pessimist Saturday edition. We're talking all the important things. Tom DeLonge, Blink-182, Green Day, all of that.
Simple Plan.
Yellow
Cab.
Oh my gosh.
Yellow Cab. Taking Back Sunday.
I mean, My Chemical Romance even.
My Chemical Romance.
Yeah, 30 Seconds to Mars, Jared Leto, all that good stuff.
All that.
Oh, we're going to talk a little bit about Mississippi State and LSU on this Saturday. Game day. Woo! It's game day. But it is game day. We're going to do just a quick little LSU talk, me and Ro Hunter here. Honestly, though, this is mostly, I feel like we're recording this just to convince people to listen to our basketball podcast, 40 Minutes of Hell. That's the only reason we're putting anything together here. We're like, hey, do you think we are entertaining at all? Why don't you listen to something that we do where we completely talk out of our butts the whole time?
Absolutely. I got some thoughts on the current NBA season already.
Solid. I love it.
I
love it. So, hey, look, there's the plug right there. If you aren't subscribed to 40 Minutes of Hell, you can find it all the places that you find Running Out the Clock. So just look for it. You'll find it. It's whatever. Mississippi State LSU play tonight. Hopefully you will listen to this episode before that matchup happens. If you don't, then it's outdated. So, sorry.
Yeah. We either look like geniuses or fools, depending on how this conversation goes.
Right. This has been a weird game for the last 4 years in particular.
Oh, yeah.
You go back to 2013, LSU whomped down on the Bulldogs, 59-26, so doesn't matter much. 2014, it was a 34-29 Mississippi State victory, but that was actually a bit of a misnomer because that was a Mississippi State blowout that LSU put some points up at the end to make it closer than it actually was for the entirety of the game.
Yep. It was a great game, too.
It was a great game. 2015 and 2016 were both very close LSU victories, 21-19 and 23-20. And then, of course, last season was a 30-point beatdown by the Bulldogs over the Tigers. What do you think? I know you predicted on our major ROTC episode, you predicted the Mississippi State victory, if I remember correctly.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely.
I didn't, but I made a comment that I could see a lot of ways in which Mississippi State could pull off the victory, and that's kind of why we're recording this episode now. But what makes you confident about a Bulldog victory in this matchup here?
Mostly just because of anytime LSU mixes up their uniforms, it's no good for them. And that is all honest to God my reasoning. Anytime they wear like purple pants or they do any of that stuff, like there is something to that. They lose big games. Plus, this is a trap game coming off of a big upset over Georgia. If you remember at the beginning of the season, that was like this stretch right here for LSU when we were all talking like LSU's overrated. This is going to be a bad year, yada, yada, yada.
Their schedule sucks.
This is the worst part or whatever. I didn't see them beating Georgia really at all. But they did. They did it.
Most anyone in the first like 6 weeks of the season.
But especially Georgia, though. I just thought Georgia's a better team. And I still think Georgia's a better team than LSU. Yes. But mainly, I just look back from last year with Mississippi State. This is not like for a very long time, like I feel like it was like between 2000, like 99. No, it would have been 2000 to 2013. We never won against LSU. We never really even played them that close.
No, it for some reason Mississippi State could play Alabama better than most teams, but then get blown out by LSU every year. And Ole Miss always played LSU better than most teams, but would get blown out by Alabama. And then at some point that kind of swapped around a little bit.
Yeah, and so I think like that history, that like 13-year gap where there's not really any wins against LSU, it affects people's judgment on how they predict this game.
Yes.
And so they don't really look at what you just pointed out a minute ago, the last 4 years. Like last year against Dave Aranda's unit, the Bulldogs rushed for 285 yards and rolled up pretty much they rushed for 285 and a total of 465 yards against the same team. Yeah. I just to me it's like, Don't overlook those stats. Maybe LSU had a bad game last year or whatever, but what I saw last weekend against Auburn gave me I guess it kind of did away with the name of this podcast that we're doing. Like I feel a little bit more hopeful. I'm not as pessimistic because I mean, if that's our game plan for this game where we just rush and rush and rush, dude, it's gonna be it'll be a very close game. It won't be a blowout by any stretch of the imagination. If that's kind of our bread and butter is just keeping possession of the ball, keeping that time, managing that time. And, I mean, when our quarterback and our running backs are averaging 4 and 5 yards a carry, you can't do anything about that. You can't stop it. And you hear it every year. It's so debilitating to any defense, much less a good one like LSU, to not be able to stop that because it's so frustrating. And I was watching a game study from Matt Wyatt. There's a little plug for him of him breaking down the LSU, the Auburn and Mississippi State of how that went or whatever. And then I watched LSU versus Georgia last week, and he pointed out a few trends in there too. With it, you have to account for so much when you have a very mobile quarterback. You're able to make the linebackers misread things. And all it takes, if you have a guy like Nick Fitzgerald in the backfield who can make you miss both in the backfield and downfield, all it takes is that linebacker or that defensive end to second guess, and he's a step and a half ahead of you. And so that right there is the major thing. I'll let you get back and finish that thought. No,
that
was it.
Is the major thing that did not work against Kentucky or Florida is that the game plan never made it a point to play action with Fitzgerald, basically. Yeah. He never really, all too often the play was Fitzgerald basically just like dropping back and being a pocket passer.
Yeah.
And the defenses looked at that and said, okay, well, if that's all he's doing, then we're just going to cover up all these wide receivers because they can't run routes to save their lives. And that's what worked. And so against Auburn, it was, okay, fine, we'll keep with the run. And so if you run to set up the pass, which is what Mississippi State is built to do right now, and I think what Moorhead's remembering, then that's what plays into Fitzgerald's skill set for sure.
Yep.
Anyway, I'll let you finish that
thought. Absolutely, you're absolutely right. I'm like looking at the stats from last year, this game. I mean, these are almost identical teams, you know, like from what they were last year to what they are now. And man, that game last year, dude, was a complete domination in every facet of the game.
Absolutely.
LSU has a few injuries heading into this game from last week. Nothing major at all. No. Nothing crazy, but we get back Jamal Peters.
Is Peters coming back?
He's coming back. Yeah, he'll be here. He's apparently got the go ahead. We get Peters back, as well as I'm thinking Darrell Williams, the left guard. I think he's out. I'm not sure though. That's what I was trying to look up. I haven't seen anything reported on him. Which that's going to be
the last I've heard is that it's just unknown if he's coming back or not. So we'll probably a game time decision sort of thing.
But my point being, right, like no way do injuries play into this game. I just go with kind of emotions at this point in the season. Who wants it more? Who has more to prove in this? Right. And I pick State just because of our terrible losses to Florida and Kentucky.
Yeah. And they know that they have to do something against these teams that in these matchups where they've been written off. They have to do something,
Yeah.
I think something that you said that was exactly what I was thinking as well, and it really stands out. These are almost identical teams from last year. The differences are with Mississippi State probably definitely a more well-rounded defense than before. That's the major difference for Mississippi State. Better defense, just all in all. And for LSU, they have a different quarterback that can make some plays on the ground. Danny Etling was not that for them. But LSU had a better running back last year. That's not to discount like the impact that Nick Brossette and what is their other running back?
Geis?
Name.
No, I'm kidding. I don't know. I can't remember him.
I'll find it real quick. I've got it sitting here. Clyde Edwards-Helaire.
There you go.
So anyway, not to really discount them, but I mean, if you've got two running backs that have 134 and 89 carries so far this season, compared to the Mississippi State leading rushers, which have 98 carries, 68, and 29 carries so far in the year.
Right.
If Geis made the most out of his carries, and Brossette is just kind of like making the most out of his stamina. Being able to. So the major difference for LSU is Joe Burrow, and then probably Justin Jefferson as a wide receiver. They actually have a reliable wide receiver again. This offense reminds me a little bit more of that Zach Mettenberger, Odell Beckham, Jarvis Landry, Jeremy Hill offense. The difference being it's a more mobile quarterback, one reliable hands wide receiver, and then two volume running backs, as opposed to two reliable hands wide receivers and one volume running back. No. But I mean, these are very, very similar teams, and I think you're right. It comes down to emotions. One thing that stands out, and I want to pick your brain on this as well, because we mentioned a little bit about it in the main episode, and I feel like maybe didn't give enough attention to it, but we saw Florida absolutely run a perfect game plan against LSU.
Yeah.
I mean, like, they ran the read options. They ran the read options with a quarterback in Felipe Franks, who I'm pretty sure has never actually run before this season. I actually looked it up, and so far in his career, up until this year, he had a whopping 20 rushing yards.
Really?
Out of last season. Yeah.
That's shocking to me.
Really?
20 yards. That's
yeah.
I thought it'd be more than that.
He is not a dual threat. He's a pocket passer, and Mullen is just making the most out of spreading things around. So
he's just Tyler Russell. He's Tyler Russell 2.0.
No, he absolutely is. No, he absolutely is Tyler Russell. Yeah. Just a higher recruit coming out of high school. But anyway, so Florida ran read options and ran it down LSU's throat just whenever they wanted to, it seemed. And like against Auburn, we ran to the outside edges with that little Kylan Hill lining up in the slot and then coming into the backfield on sweeps and everything. And so we showed people that, we played to Auburn's weakness, the outside edge and everything. Florida played to LSU's weakness, the inside read option, faking the linebackers out because LSU's strength is on the corners and the linebackers.
Right.
And then Georgia comes out and just opening drive, averages 10 yards a carry, get to the red zone, throw the ball a bunch, screw it all up. The rest of the game, they're playing behind and they're throwing the ball around, and it's not working because they're playing to LSU's defensive strength and pass coverage. What in the world was Georgia even doing last week?
I don't know, man. I think Kirby Smart reminds me of Nick Saban a lot. He comes from the Nick Saban tree, but one of the key tenets of Nick Saban is you see it a lot with these college coaches of like not really adjusting. The only game I can think where Nick Saban adjusted anything was the national championship last year, where he takes out Jalen because he's not having a great game at the start and puts in Tua. That's so not Nick Saban whatsoever. I'd never, and I think Kirby's smart with that too. Like, I think when he gets a game plan and he believes in his game plan, he believes himself, he believes that it's going to go. That's just that type of coach that he is. I was just as shocked as you are to like, they're all right, 10 yards of carry, they're going up the middle, this, that, or the other, that first drive. And then just like you said, he starts airing the ball out in the red zone. It's like, what are we doing here? What are you doing here, Georgia? That's not, you've abandoned the thing that got you down there, and they never did it again the entire game. And it didn't make any sense, Yeah. I look at it like, especially with State coming into Baton Rouge, that's Nick's Fitzgerald's bread and butter is running up the middle, doing the read option stuff. He's not an outside Lamar Jackson type dude or anything, or Johnny Manziel escapability, all that kind of stuff, which we all like to see. It looks nice.
Speed. He looks like a track runner, and the other guys.
Absolutely. He looks like Terry Bradshaw from 1970, whatever, where that dude, Terry Bradshaw's huge, man. He was so big, he just run people over. That's what Nick Fitzgerald does. And that's exactly where they're going to attack. I hope so, if I'm, from what I see, that's kind of where you go after LSU and their defense. They have a very fast, quick, athletic defense. You go right up the middle, and it will be the most boneheaded thing ever for Joe Moorhead to pull a Kirby Smart here and stick to his game plan, whatever, and start throwing the ball around. If we do that, we'll lose. But hopefully he's learned what works with this team, and kind of use that to our advantage. Hopefully.
Yeah. And that's what the Auburn game did for Mississippi State more than anything else. The Auburn game said, okay, we have the ability to know how to game plan and adjust after 2 weeks, because the Kentucky game, there was just nothing was going to go right. That's whatever. Forget that game. Kentucky did what they did and whatever. But the Florida game's entirely on us, Yeah.
Oh, totally. Oh,
Florida
absolutely.
Game entirely on Mississippi State. Florida played a great game plan and Mississippi State did not. So it comes out for the Auburn game, and Mississippi State is the one that comes in with the game plan. So it brings in that hope that you're talking about. It kind of removes the pessimism a bit, because we're like, okay, well, we know how to beat LSU.
Yeah.
At this point, you run the read options, you provide both an inside and an outside running threat, and they don't know how to cover that. And that's all you have to do. The question is, if it's not working, then are you going to stick with it, or are you going to panic?
Yeah.
And that's the question we have here. LSU on offense, of course, is led by Joe Burrow right now, who's having a pretty decent year. I mean, he's throwing for 1,400 yards. He's got 6 touchdowns to only 2 interceptions. Their game plan, LSU is a team that just never changes. Have you ever noticed that?
Dude, isn't that the truth? Like, they don't change anything. And when they do, they lose. Yeah. Right? That's the truth.
I was thinking about it this morning. I was like, they just never change. They always have a big offensive line, at least 2 running backs that they give the ball to about 25 times a game. And then if they get one quarterback who doesn't make mistakes, they win games, and that's it. And they've been that way for almost 2 decades now.
Yep.
So Burrow is an interesting quarterback because he does have some maneuverability. He's shown that so far. And every week he seems to do a little bit more, it seems, to improve his game. I mean, he's rushing a little bit better, or he's throwing a little bit better, or whatever. But their game plan is pretty much the same. They run to set up the pass, pound the ball until the defense creeps up too much, and then let Burrow make a little play action or like run to the outside. That's it. So that sort of offense, what do you have to do to stop that sort of thing, you think, if you're Mississippi State?
Oh, dude. Oh, man. Well, first, I'll look at it from the other side, from LSU's side for offense. Like, what do they have to do to kind of protect Joe Burrow? Because if LSU's gonna win this game, then they're gonna have to protect him. The problem with this, right, is
they're gonna have to pass the ball well to win.
Yeah, they have to. They have no other option. The problem with this is senior defensive end Montez Sweat already has 3 tackles for loss to his credit and 3 sacks by himself. All right. Yep. His 7.5 sacks this season are tied for 4th in the nation. He is great. And obviously in the middle, we have defensive tackle Jeffrey Simmons. Mm-hmm. He is probably the top defensive tackle in the nation. Well, he maybe 1 or 2 preseason All-American, first team. He's having an All-American year already.
Yeah, we can't forget how good Ed Oliver is as far as talent out there in Houston. But yeah, Simmons definitely has to be up there.
Simmons is definitely up there. If LSU is going to stop these 2 dudes, all right, they have to have great play in the offensive line. The issue with that is that they have a true freshman in Chase Hines will be making his first collegiate start against one or both of these dudes.
Yeah,
this is a big issue. It's something that a lot of people are overlooking too, I think, when it comes to the defense versus the offense. Who would you say has a better – this is why this game is so intriguing to me, and I'll ask you, who do you think has the better matchup? LSU's offense against Mississippi State's defense, or Mississippi State's defense against LSU's offense? Which one would you say has the advantage there?
Oh, very intriguing. It's and you got to think it's Mississippi State's defense, regardless of where you fall on the fence in terms of who it is that you're pulling for. You can't look at a defense. You can't look at the top scoring defense in the country in Mississippi State. You can't look at talent like Sweat as a pass rusher, Simmons as a space eater in the middle. You can't look at Cameron Dantzler as one of the best shutdown corners in the conference right now, overlooked, but has some of the best passes defended statistics so far on the season. You can't overlook the Jonathan Abram and Mark McLaurin at the safety position, having really, really solid performances so far in the year. You can't overlook Jamal Peters coming back from injury. You can't overlook Errol Thompson being a breakout linebacker, stud for Mississippi State. You can't overlook Chauncey Rivers as that relief pass rusher, that other side of the line guy. Braxton Hoyette has low-key had a very good season so far as the other defensive tackle. It's a well-rounded defense, and they showed it against Auburn. Granted, Auburn's offense struggles and has been struggling, but part of that is because part of their struggle is because Mississippi State's defense came out, played a well-rounded game, and just beat the mess out of them.
Yeah.
And that started a lot of issues for Auburn, or continued it, exemplified it. So you can't look at a defense like that and honestly think that that's not the better of the two, just because with LSU, it's a very careful, cautious 4.5 yards and a cloud of dust offense most of the time.
Yeah, I don't disagree with you at all there. I mean, you look at what the Gators did to LSU, their only loss for the year. They overwhelmed LSU with 11 tackles for loss and 5 sacks. And the Mississippi State defense right now is tied 21st nationally with a total of 51 tackles for loss.
Yeah.
All right. And that's a Florida, big number.
It's very huge. Florida is developing week by week into one of the better pass rushing defenses that we see in the conference. But Mississippi State is still leaps and bounds ahead of them.
Oh, yeah. Oh, absolutely. I mean, I will say to Joe Burrow's credit, he is more like I predicted him to be just a game manager, kind of like a Mettenberger or any of the Alabama quarterbacks not named Tua. Right. I totally predicted him to be just a game manager, and he is more than that. I mean, he really is. He's had a very, like you said a minute ago. He has a excuse me. He's had a pretty good year, better than average. And he has a very big QB IQ. He makes a lot of good decisions. Yeah. And like you said a minute ago, in order for them to be successful, they need to force this dude to run. He threw, I mean, like if meaning they need to get in the backfield, and I think he averaged like 2.2 yards a carry or something every time they made him run. When Florida was rushing him or whatever, like something like that. But then he made no mistakes against Georgia and averaged 5 yards a carry. So I will, especially with Shoop's defense and his style. I mean, he likes to rush, dude. That's what he likes to do. He likes to bring very complex blitzes, not necessarily always on third down. That's what you saw with Todd Grantham last year, and you saw it this year when we played Florida, where it's like every third down you count on at least 7 or 8 dudes in the backfield.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Pretty much.
It's the most predictable. Like Todd Grantham is the most predictable when it comes to his blitzing schemes. Yeah, Shoop not quite like that. Shoop does prefer a little bit more coverage. That's one of the reasons why he tends to play kind of a 4-2-5 type of defense most of the time. But then you've got those 4 are always pass rushing, and those 4 are always basically doing the work of a 7-man blitz just off of talent,
Right.
Crazy. It's crazy. On the other side, of course, LSU has their own very good defense. The thing that Florida showed us when they played a couple of weeks back is that the middle of their defense is vulnerable. You don't really want to pass against Florida or against LSU. You don't want to try to tempt fate against like Greedy Williams and those defensive backs if you can avoid it. And their linebackers are very good, better for sure than Auburn's linebackers, where Auburn had the better defensive line than LSU does. And so what you want to do, and that's why those read options work, because what the read options do is it relies, in order to guard the read option well, you have to have linebackers that make the quick decision of, are we clogging the middle, or are we going to the outside? And then Mississippi State has to, on the flip side of that, be able to quickly go, okay, are they clogging the middle? Or are they going to the outside? Where are we going to take that? And expose the middle of that. And that's kind of the key, it seems like, going up against the LSU defense. But I don't know if you see anything different there as far as Mississippi State's offense has to go.
No, our offensive line is going to have to be incredibly aggressive. I think one of the 2 losses that we have against Florida and Kentucky, one of the things that I saw a lot, it's like we went in, like our offensive line, looking at it from that unit, it's like we tried to do like this drunken monk karate or something where you like, hey, go with me on this analogy, where you go like,
I'm scared.
Please, it is scary. Where you basically kind of bend and flex with the defensive rush that's happening, and so it looks like you see in the NFL sometimes with those types of offensive lines or whatever. And rather than being aggressive, they become kind of like these dudes that just kind of hover, right? Kind of like a drunken Buddhist monk. I don't know why that comes to my mind. I feel like that's like a martial arts form where you just act like you're drunk and pretend that you're gonna hurt somebody.
Jackie Chan made at least a couple of movies out of it.
That's right, dude. That's right. But see, our bread and butter, I mean, like for our offensive line is that they're very good runners. They're very quick. They're not the biggest offensive line in the SEC, but they are aggressive. They move well with our runners. That's what makes our offense work. That's what has made our offense work the last few years. We're not designed to hold a lot of pass rush or whatever. Like we're good if you rush 3, like
right.
Then we're good.
Yeah.
But when it comes to actually protecting our quarterback, we don't really need to. I see us kind of what I'm predicting is a lot of read option, a lot of nick keepers, right up the middle. I think that's probably the best way to do it. I think I agree with you when you said, don't want to test fate against Greedy Williams. Dude, they don't call him Greedy for nothing. All right. They don't call him Greedy for nothing.
No, they do not. Yeah. I mean, I accidentally jumped into it sounded like a Dan Mullen impression. Yeah, but that's it. That's exactly it. I mean, there's the offensive line is built to be just a quick strike, run blocking offensive line. Yeah. They're and you saw it against Auburn. It's as soon as like the ball is hiked, they're in those positions ready to block the guy. Yeah, they can't. Moorhead's offense in his dream scenario has an offensive line that can get in place and like guard the zone for a couple of seconds, and that's not the personnel he has. And so against Florida, you have these offensive plays in which Fitzgerald's having to stop and like make these reads in a long setup wide receiver route type of, offensive scheme. And the main difference between Mississippi State versus Florida, Mississippi State versus Auburn is that Moorhead said, okay, yeah, I see my scheme is not ready to be implemented 100%, and I've got to play a little bit differently to match the personnel. And so he saw how it worked against Auburn. There's no reason to think he's not going to try to replicate the exact same thing against LSU.
Yeah.
And avoid those long developing pass plays that he was trying to run that, they work against Stephen F. Austin and Louisiana Lafayette and, Kansas State. Yeah, they work against them, but they're not going to work against the pass rushes that you come up against with Florida, with Auburn, and then you'd think with LSU. And so, you got to think this is going to be a very smart game plan out of Moorhead if he wants to prove that, yes, I am still a smart offensive coach.
I just go ahead.
I was just going to say it's just a little bit frustrating because after the Florida loss, the season in a lot of ways is still kind of over, but there's still a lot that can be proven, especially moving forward as, okay, so the transition might have messed us up this year, but we're still going to be able to, as a team, be a team to look out for in the next couple of years, especially once Moorhead gets his scheme and his offense fully implemented the way he wants it to.
Yeah, I look at this too. Just I'm sitting here looking at stats right now for just total defense versus total offense or whatever per team. This really is a trap game for LSU. I mean, everybody in Vegas has said this. A lot of the dudes that do the handicapping have kind of said this is especially after LSU rushes the field. They beat Georgia. Fans are, notoriously terrible. And they not LSU fans, just fans in general.
Yes, meaning all fans are.
Yeah, they hype a team up so much, and a lot of times the players will believe it. And LSU, I look at it in terms of, like I said, I'm looking at stats right now. Total defense, Mississippi State is number 8. Total defense for LSU, they're 33rd.
Mm-hmm.
This is not gonna be a high scoring, high power game unless one of these teams just doesn't show up. And I think with us coming off the bye week, we're rested. I don't see that killing our momentum, especially after clobbering Auburn.
I mean, that's 2 weeks.
Yeah.
To be able to implement a smart read option oriented game plan against LSU.
Yeah. Yeah. And if that doesn't happen, then, maybe we should look at a new coach.
Right. It's going to tell us a lot about Moorhead.
It really will.
For sure. There was an interesting article that I think it was on I think my brother told me it was on Gene's page, which I just don't really frequent. But that I'm trying to see it. Oh, well, I don't see it. Anyway, there was an article recently about Jackie Sherrill in 1991 going up against LSU and basically saying he turned to like his offensive coaches at the time and just said, hey, guys, LSU is weak against a certain type of option runs in 91. He goes, this is totally different than our game plan, but you think you could think you could create a wishbone offense in about the week and a half that we have to prepare? And the coaches went, yeah, okay. And so they did. And in 1991, Sleepy Robinson of Mississippi State ran all over LSU. So if you got 2 weeks, and so the whole point is, hey, look, if you got 2 weeks to just throw in a particular game plan, we saw a drastically different game plan change between Florida and Auburn.
Absolutely.
No reason to believe that sort of thing can't happen again.
Yeah.
This weekend or today, rather, against LSU. So I feel like this is, this personnel wise, if I had to put a percentage on it, I think this is a 60-40, maybe 65-35 Mississippi State playing into Mississippi State's favor. The major thing is you never know what's going to happen in Baton Rouge.
Yeah.
You just don't.
And they have to play Alabama next week. All right. Like this is one of those games. I'm telling you, LSU, just like we were talking a minute ago, there was 13 years where we never really got close. The games were not that good. I was in college for 4 of those years in the early 2000s, and we got trounced by LSU. And so I think when people still look at Mississippi State like this, but especially LSU fans and even the players, they're like, oh, they're terrible or awful or whatever. But I do believe that Mississippi State is still a good football team, regardless of if season is over and all that kind of stuff. This is a tough spot for LSU to be in terms of what they're trying to do to salvage their season or to get to continue it going into the college playoffs. I highly expect them to do a total Louisiana State thing and overlook us, and like they did last year and even the few years before that. To move on to bigger and better things. That is just the LSU mentality. And then they're like, why aren't we in a national championship every year? Because you do this every year. You do the same thing
because you don't know year. For being one of the most boring offenses, boring and efficient offenses, you also somehow lack all consistency.
Yeah.
How do you do that? I don't know. It'll be interesting. You got to think that, LSU really only has one receiving threat. Not that Mississippi State has any, but LSU only really has one receiving threat at Justin Jefferson. He's got 27 of the receptions for 453 yards and 2 touchdowns. So if he's shadowed by Cam Dantzler the whole day, they've got to rely on some of the other guys. They've got to rely on Joe Burrow to make some plays with his feet. Yeah. And if Mississippi State's almost identical front line was able to hold a much better running back in Darius Geis to only 76 yards on 15 attempts and Darrell Williams 29 yards on 5 attempts, if they're able to hold them to that last year, then you got to think that they're looking to replicate that once again here. But we'll see. It'll be a weird one. It'll be an interesting one.
We shall see.
Yeah, I think it plays well in Mississippi State's favor. I did predict an LSU victory, though, just because There's just something about going to all them Gator rituals.
All them damn Gator rituals, dog. Like I'm telling you, these things are real. They are twisted and crooked. All you got to do is go back and watch the first season of True Detective. You'll see what I'm talking about down there in the bayou. They are weird, dude. They're just weird people. And on top of all that, right? And seriously, I think State is a 6.5 or 7 point underdog, something like that.
Yeah, I think that's it. I think it's just about a touchdown. Yeah.
Yeah. That should be it. That is anytime you see that in a game like this where everyone can look at statistics and all this kind of stuff, that means that Vegas sees something. And so they want you to pick LSU. That's what they want. They want you to pick LSU by a touchdown.
Yeah.
Wise gambling man myself very much would say to pick not only State to cover, but also to possibly do an upset.
Yeah.
That just makes a lot of sense. I also just got distracted, which is why I stopped, by Michigan State's player or Michigan's player maybe like rubbing his feet into the ground of the field or something. Yeah. And then everyone got really mad about it and they started a fight maybe.
Yeah, that was a weird highlight. I was looking at that as well. I've got Ole Miss and Auburn over here. I've got Liverpool and Huddersfield Town over on the other side as we're recording.
Oh, you were a communist, dude.
Yeah, I know. I love it. Nothing quite like waking up. I don't say what you will. I know it sounds criminal to say it on a SEC podcast, but I've openly stated how much I hate the SEC as a whole. But man, waking up on a Saturday morning, it's infinitely better to be able to watch the Premier League instead of watching
College game day
for SEC Nation.
I 1,000% agree.
It is
that.
so wonderful. So wonderful.
There's no Christian Hulk named Tim Tebow telling you that he's picking helmets. That's right. that was him this morning. All right. I call him the Christian Hulk because he's about as intelligent as the real Hulk. And but he's nice. So he's a nice guy. So you gotta give Tebow credit because he's nice and he cries when they lose. So
Hulk witness,
Hulk save, Hulk disciple. And so he picked all the other guys like Booger and whoever else was on that, Paul Feinbaum, had like good points. And they get to Tim Tebow and he's like, all right, guys, here's what I'm going. LSU's doing a big tribute to World War I. And I really like their helmets. So based on that, I'm picking LSU because I think that's really good. And we're going to fight super hard to win the victories against all the victories. And that's how we're going to do things.
Yeah,
that's a direct quote.
Yeah, that sounds. It sounds accurate. I'm in on that. Totally in on that. Real quick, you watch Monday Night Football, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Just in general.
Yeah.
Why in the world do they just put Booger McFarland on a forklift and lift him up on the sideline? Is that not the weirdest like sideline reporter setup?
They might as well give him a damn drone and hover him right above the 50-yard line. Like not too high. We're not talking like up in the sky, but I don't know, maybe just attach him to like a big old helicopter and just let him hover there. It would be just as aesthetically pleasing to watch that as it is to watch him on this ridiculous forklift that they move him up and down the side. It doesn't make
any sense. I was paying closer attention to his setup because I've always been like, oh, they've just got him sitting in some chair on the sidelines. This week I actually paid closer attention to it and was like, oh, they literally have him in a small lift in like a chair that he's like strapped into with like a phone charger and a water bottle in his like next to him in his cup. I'm like, this is weird.
I would love to know, like, the person in that producer meeting who's going like, you know what we need? We need to get Booger McFarland. We need a bird's eye view, as if they don't have cameras that we can all have a bird's eye view. Yeah. But we need somebody who is down there calling the game with a bird's eye view. And so that, like, I would love to hear the logic or the reasoning as to why that would be to put Booger McFarland up on a forklift like that. That would be like putting, I don't know, the Titanic on top of the Statue of Liberty, because Booger is way too big to be up there.
Like, and how do you think they convinced him? They're like, hey, Booger, you want to work on Monday Night Football? He's like, absolutely, I do. That would be awesome. They're like, okay, here's the catch. You're going to be confined to a small chair, suspended in the air for the entirety of the broadcast. You good with that? I mean, I don't know. We'll give you a phone charger. Okay.
We'll give you a phone charger.
I'm in.
How do they negotiate his salary and all the what happens if he falls, like is he going to be held liable for that? Like if he has to pay for all of his medical bills when a gust of wind tops him over or he gets hit in the face with a ball or something?
I'd hate to see the counterweights on that lift that he's on.
No, man, it's so ridiculous.
And you think it shakes? Booger. Like I have to get up in this genie lift a lot at work in order to replace lights and stuff.
Absolutely.
And I hate that thing. You get 15 feet off the ground and it feels like it's about to just like shimmy, Cocoa
one of the most traumatic memories in my life is when the first time my dad took me hunting. All right, took me and my brother. I was probably 7, my brother was 5 or something like that. We get up in what's called a tripod tree stand, which is basically what it sounds like. It's a tree stand with a chair on top of it with 3 legs. All right, and you're probably 30 feet above the ground, maybe. And for a 7-year-old, 30 feet feels like 300 feet.
Right, yeah.
And it's a cold winter day, early in the morning. Wind is gusting. We climb up this thing, and it's just the 3 of us on one chair, all right? And every time the wind blows one way or the other, the entire thing shakes, and it's terrifying the whole time. And then my dad has to get down to go chase a deer that he saw, and it's just me and my brother in this thing, and a big gust of wind comes and like just shifts us one way. And I swear I've never heard my brother make the noise that he make ever since then. Ever. It was like a screech owl meets a cow. It was ridiculous, dude. And I was like, I never want to go deer hunting ever again. Ever. It was awful. It was awful. So I imagine Booger feels kind of the same way. He's like, when are y'all going to put me up in this stupid booth and get me off this list? Please. Why don't they let's put John Madden in that forklift, all right? Let's get Madden back on Monday Night Football.
Yep.
All 80 years old of him.
Yep.
And him sitting there calling games. That would be far more interesting than Booger. I just feel sorry for Booger.
I do too. I miss John Madden. That's all I really want. I just miss John Madden.
That's just true.
Missing. I got distracted for a minute in there because I saw on Instagram the video of the player defacing the Michigan State logo. And I'd be more upset over the fact that he just went up there and like tore up the turf. Like that's going to be difficult to play on. He spent 10 minutes just destroying the turf, and the grounds crew was working hard on that thing. Anyway,
if there was ever any justice in football, then he would definitely trip in the hole that he dug.
In the hole that he dug.
That would be, that would be why I would have a lot of pleasure watching that.
Me too. All right, we got to end this so that we can actually upload it before the game starts in a few hours. But that's been Ro. I'm Joseph. This is the Weekly Pessimist emergency Saturday morning, afternoon, whatever episode. Thanks for joining us on this. We'll talk to you again after the LSU Mississippi State game, obviously, and we'll see exactly where we've ended up and whether we look like geniuses or morons. My bet is we're going to look like really, really beautiful morons.
I wholly agree.
All right. See y'all later.
Peace.